Now tonight, it is my pleasure to welcome Ashley Klinder. Sorry about that. Ashley is a sophomore at Joliet Junior College and will be completing her Associates of Science this fall. She's planning to transfer to a four-year college next spring, and she will be majoring in environmental science with a focus on conservation, ecology, and human dimensions of the environment. Tonight, Ashley will be presenting research that she and another student, Josh Polarek, did with Professor John Griffiths last summer. Their work focused on the effects of snags and logjams on macroinvertebrate populations. And with that, I would like to welcome Ashley.
Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's doing good tonight. Thank you for having me speak. And let me share my screen. So yes, thank you once again. My presentation tonight is going to be on the impact of woody debris on macroinvertebrate populations and streams. Here's our outline for tonight. We're going to be doing an overview on macroinvertebrate populations and stream microhabitats. Here, let me move this out of the way. I'm sorry, guys. All right, so yep, we're going to be going over macroinvertebrate populations and stream microhabitats. We'll be going through stream quality methodologies, and then on to our research, which is the impacts of woody debris on populations. So Tyler Polarek's research was on snag characteristics, and mine is going to be the effects from a ruptured logjam, and we'll be finishing up with the Q&A at the end. So the first thing we have to talk about is aquatic macroinvertebrate populations. They are generally snails, worms, crayfish, clams, and insects that live part or all of their life in water. A lot of ours that we will be talking about are actually nymphs. So the relevant stream quality taxonomy to RiverWatch and to our research today is EPT, which is Aphomatera, Plecoptera, and Trichoptera versus non-EPT orders. And then we have pollution intolerant versus pollution tolerant families. Here are some of the macroinvertebrates that I'm talking about. On the left side, we have our EPT, not in that order, but with the mayfly, the hydrocyclic caddisfly, and the stonefly. And then on the right side, I have some of the most dominant taxa from our research, which are pollution tolerant as well. And they are midges, scuds, and flatworms. So we conducted our research at Van Horn Woods in Plainfield, Illinois. And here is us down here. Again, if you'd like to look at these. And so we went out into Van Horn Woods streams, into Lilycash Creek, specifically is where we collected our data, which is not where this photo is. Oops. But for our sampling, we used a D-frame net where we positioned this net on the left side here. We positioned it where the water flows through downstream and all the macroinvertebrates are collected. We could either scrape the snag with the net, which is what we did for Tyler's research, and one sample I did on mine, where the net is just put on the dead piece of wood, the snag log, and scraped for 10 minutes. And the other type that we do is in the sediment with a kick net sample. And for that, we just have the net touching the sediment and we disturb the area in front for 3 minutes. So once we have our macroinvertebrates, we're putting them into a 5-gallon bucket that you see me holding in the image in the middle. And we did 2 different types of sampling, Tyler and I did a subsample where all of my sampling locations were. We put all of the macroinvertebrates into one bucket. And for Tyler's, he had 4 different locations with 4 different spots where he had 4 separate buckets. So after we have all of our macroinvertebrates, we go to a pavilion and sit down and pick them all out and put them onto a tray where there's a little soda water that makes them tired, and then we put them into a jar with 91% isopropyl alcohol. Once we have them all collected, we'll take them back to the laboratory where we identified them, sorted them, and counted them with our dissecting scope. We did our analysis and recorded our data. And this is how we determined our analysis with these statistics. We have these two indices, and I'm going to go over this briefly. We have two indices, the Macroinvertebrate Biotic Index and the Shannon Diversity Index. And both of these are important when finding a rating for the stream. And they're how macroinvertebrates, how our numbers and calculations tie in. So the two groups that I was talking about earlier, EPT and non-EPT, and then pollution tolerant and pollution intolerant, they were the most essential aspects of our study in determining this data. And we also did, after we have all these numbers and the indices, we're able to compare them for Tyler's research between snag samples and for mine between years to find significant differences with the chi-square analysis. Our focus is woody debris. So it's a microhabitat, and the Illinois RiverWatch says that there's a hierarchy for microhabitats, starting with riffles, which are areas where water flows quickly over rocks and stones, leaf packs, snags, or woody debris, undercut banks, and then with the least amount in sediments. Woody debris and snags are interesting because they are portions of trees that are only partially submerged in the water, and they provide a surface for macroinvertebrates to cling to. So I'll just read this now. Woody debris drastically affects stream ecology and morphology. Logjams are a dense collection of woody debris that drastically affect water flow and microhabitats. Snags are submerged pieces of woody debris. And I added this last quote in just to show how important that they are, even though they're in the middle of that ranking. Large woody debris is an integral component of stream and river corridors, positively affecting material retention, habitat formation, and productivity. And this is Tyler's research. His is the comparisons and relations of microinvertebrate populations based on snag characteristics. So his hypothesis was, or his objective was to compare macroinvertebrate colonizations in relation to different snag characteristics. And he thinks that the populations were going to differ based on the size of the snag, which is small and large diameter, and then the presence or absence of bark. He expected large snags to host more organisms and have a greater diversity when compared to small snags, and that snags with bark are going to host more organisms and have a greater diversity compared to those without bark. So we are in Plainfield at Van Horn Woods in Lily Cache Creek. We had different physical conditions that we had to measure about the stream, including the water depth, the canopy cover, and water velocity. The 4 snag groups that Tyler had sampled were group 1, small diameter and bark present, group 2, large diameter and bark present, group 3, large diameter and bark present. Oh, I said, anyway, group 4, small diameter and bark absent. And these sizes here, you can see the diameters, what the canopy cover was in the area, and the water velocity. On the left, we have the small diameter snag with bark. On the right, the large diameter snag without bark. The left, the large diameter snag with bark. And on the right, the small diameter snag without bark. So overwhelmingly, number 1 had the most amount of organisms with 417, a taxa richness of excellent, and the EPT taxa richness of fair, and the MBI rating of fair as well. Snag 2 had substantially less with its ratings there, good, fair, and very poor. Snag number 3 with the second most with bark present again, with excellent fair, and poor. And then snag 4, the small snag without bark, had fair, very poor, and poor macroinvertebrate population. So here are the types of organisms that he connected from each snag. And like I said at the beginning, you see a lot of midges, scuds, and flatworms. Yes. So here we have our EPT and non-EPT versus pollution intolerant and pollution tolerant. For the small snags, you can see that their EPT populations were varied. And on the right side, you can see that with bark, there's a much higher number of populations. So in our discussion here for Tyler's research, snag size had a profound effect on populations, where, yes, and the presence of bark also had an effect. The small snag with bark present was significantly different from the large snag with bark absent and the large snag with bark present, and the amount of organic matter or water velocity. And water quality ranged from very poor to fair. So we can look at this for a moment. Yes. So in conclusion for this, if I may, the snags hosting a greater amount of larger snags hosting a greater amount of macroinvertebrates when compared to smaller snags, and the presence of bark was found to have a profound effect on macroinvertebrates within a sample. Okay, thank you. And that is the end of Tyler's. Here are his sources. And then here is my research, which is effects from a ruptured logjam comparison over 2 years. My hypothesis is that if a logjam breaks up, the taxodiversity and distribution will change. My predictions are that there will be a loss in habitat diversity, resulting in changed taxodiversity before and after the logjam breaks up. The logjam area will have lower MBI, macroinvertebrate biotic index, due to reduced and altered channel habitats. And altered habitats will result in different dominant taxa. So for my method, I was also at Lily Cache Creek in Van Horde Woods East. The relevant stream characteristics to my data were water velocity, the benthic substrate, and then turbidity. So where there were logjam breaks, we found that there was a riffle-like modification going through there where it had fine sediment, silt, and branches. And that was causing turbidity. So yes, there were the samples were taken from 3 spots, 2 samples from where the water flows over the logjam with 1 faster and 1 slower, and then 1 snag sample from where the side of the logjam is facing upstream. This is a picture of the logjam before it was broken in 2020. And here is the logjam afterwards, where we sampled. On the left side, we have the high flow where it was 0.9 meters per second and slow flow with 0.4 meters per second. So for our sampling techniques, we did 2 kicknet samples in front of the riffle-like flow with the D-net in a 0.3 meter area. And the third, like I said, the third sample was taken by scraping the net on the side of the snag. So here is the subsampling. All of our specimens were collected from the bucket and placed into 1 tray with 12 equal size square sections. Then we used a random number generator to select random sections from the tray. All of the other years that I'm comparing to, which are RiverWatch in 2020, a sample that was taken in September of 2020, that was right before the logjam broke, and then a sample right after the logjam broke in October of 2020, and then compared to RiverWatch 2021, RiverWatch 2022, and then our own sample, which was the logjam sample. And these were all subsampled. So, and here are the results from what I collected. Clearly there were a lot of non-EPT individuals consistently throughout the 2 years. However, in the original RiverWatch sample in 2020, which was at the time, it was taken at the same season as our 2022, as well as the RiverWatch 2021. Those were in the same season, but then the logjam samples of the pre and right after break in September and October were obviously in the fall. So we see that there are a high number of EPT individuals in 2020, but that drops drastically by the end of the year, and the pattern continues into logjam of 2022. And on the right side here, we can kind of see that the number of pollution intolerant individuals has a high in 2020 and kind of dips down as the years went by towards logjam 2022, with RiverWatch 2021 being an exception of having more pollution intolerant individuals. This is the number of most abundant taxa-specific organisms over the sample years. So as you can see with that dark blue for the logjam in 2022, flatworms, sowbugs, and midges were some of the most dominant taxa, while a lot of our EPT are not seen on this. And you can notice too that with RiverWatch in September of 2020, there were a lot more Northwest damselflies, operculate snails, clinging mayflies, etc. And here is my discussion. I said that the riffle-like modification over silt resulted in slight turbidity and suspended sediment. This was found to be potentially harmful to certain EPT macroinvertebrates, specifically the Hydropsyche, the Ephemeridiniaceae, and Echinurius venosus. They were considered sensitive to physical damage on their gills, and it is noticeable that the families of 2 of the 3 considered sensitive were present in RiverWatch 2020, but not afterwards. The logjam had created more microhabitat diversity and a pool upstream to accommodate for those specialized organisms' preferences. In logjam 22, the benthic conditions, most dominant organisms were scavengers that eat both plant and animal debris and are fairly pollution tolerant, such as midges, flatworms, and sowbugs. And stream quality has declined due to reduced taxa richness over 2 years. And that brings me to the end, but I know that I went very fast, so I'm so sorry about that. I can expand more on Tyler's research here. As long as you don't mind, I will be doing a little reading from his discussion. Thank you. So for his, snag size was found to have a profound effect on the population of macroinvertebrates found within a sample in both the EPT, non-EPT, and the pollution tolerant categories when using chi-square analysis, with larger snags hosting a greater amount of macroinvertebrates when compared to smaller snags. The presence or absence of bark was found to have an effect on macroinvertebrates found within a sample, but only affected the pollution intolerant categories and did not have an effect on the EPT, non-EPT category. The Small snag with bark present was found to have the greatest amount of macroinvertebrates and best water quality indications, but also was found to have the lowest Shannon diversity index rating when compared to all other snags. Such qualities could be attributed to the amount of organic matter that was trapped within the snag grouping, as well as the shade provided by the canopy cover. Additionally, this may be due to the lower water velocity around the small bark present snag. Additionally, there was no significant differences found between the small snag with bark present and the small snag with bark absent. So yes, ultimately the diameter of the snag was found to have the most profound effect on macroinvertebrate populations that colonized it. Additionally, the presence of bark was also found to affect the populations of macroinvertebrates that colonized the snag, but to a lesser degree. Yes. All right, and yes. I'm sorry to cut it short. Could I take any questions?
Thank you, Ashley, for that presentation. That was really good. Let's see. From John Griffiths, we might want to explain that the RiverWatch samples taken prior to the Logjam sample in 2022 were from a riffle and a snag just upstream from the Logjam. So I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, but
no, yes, I didn't mention that, but yes, they were taken from more than just the Logjam area. They were taken from snag and riffle over there.
Okay. And I don't know if this is my own question. I'm not sure if you'll have a solid answer for this, but with Josh's work, you know, and there being differences between working with snags that are large diameter and those that are small diameter. And I noticed that this, like what Josh found, maybe conflicts with some of the other literature. And so I didn't know if you would have any suggestions about, you know, how we should guide our RiverWatch volunteers. Do you think we should be guiding them to use larger snags or smaller, or just use whatever they find?
Oh, it's all relevant, I believe, when you're looking in an area. I don't think either should be, or any should be disconsidered. I think all of them are valid, but perhaps trying to make sure that it's a balanced sample, taking from all areas, all different types of snags.
Okay. And then Carrie has a question. Do you have any recommendations for groups interested in odonate larval monitoring regarding the use of man-made snags? So looking at dragonflies and damselflies, do you see, I guess, were you finding many of those looking in the snags?
We're not finding any dragonflies at our site. Damselflies, I can check our data here to see their presence. We did have more damselflies on the first snag, which was the large diameter, I'm sorry, which was the small diameter with bark present. So yeah, that's the areas that we've found the most in, but I don't necessarily think that could be the entire reason, just the snags qualities that are causing those damselflies to be there.
Okay, could you explain how the pollution intolerant and pollution tolerant invertebrates are defined?
Yes, so pollution, that right here, there's an indice for it, and it is rated between 1 and 10. So there is a in the middle at 5.5. If they are below that, if they're below that total, then they're going to be pollution intolerant, and if they're above, they're pollution tolerant. So most of our EPT that we see are in pollution intolerant, and like I said, some of the dominant taxa that we were seeing are non-EPT pollution tolerant.
Okay. Let's see, does anyone else have questions? If you'd like, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your questions out loud. Or you can also put it in the chat still. All right. Do your results and previous studies provide any insights into management of streams in terms of allowing more snags and logjams to exist in streams?
Absolutely. We know that snags create more diversity in a stream ecosystem and create more microhabitats just from their being there, especially with logjams. They are definitely important for stream quality. We should not be removing woody debris from streams at all. Creating log jams and things of that nature may not be as profound as just letting the natural course happen for them degrading into the stream. So, yes.
So do you have any thoughts about like how the results about log jams, do you think that the same things would apply to, say, a beaver dam?
I do think that we'll see, colonization in the same manner on a beaver dam as any other sort of dam. I don't believe that they'll be contributing negatively in any way. They would be, by creating more log jams, we'll be able to see taxa with certain affinities for the habitats it creates, like pools. In my data, I found that the taxa that were missing from post were ones that were sensitive to sediment settling on their gills. So if we have that area for them from something like a log jam, where they can have an area that is suited for them, then they can live there, and then we'll see higher diversity and better water quality scores.
Okay. So we have a comment from John Griffiths again. I wanted to say that we did a study on man-made structures and diversity several years ago and found large numbers of narrow-winged and broad-winged damselflies and some dragonfly larvae, which are generally absent in other areas of Lily Cache Creek where we sample. So they are around there. And then had another question here from Sierra, wondering how flow rate and depth of water are playing into this. And could you talk a little more about those two components?
Yes, absolutely. Velocity is velocity is a macroinvertebrate affinity. So certain species can only handle a certain velocity, which is hydrocytic caddisflies and clinging mayflies. They prefer a lower velocity, which is generally under, I believe it's 0.5 meters per second. And most macroinvertebrates don't like to be in areas above 1 meter per second. As for water depth, I can't comment on that as much. It just depends on what is what environments are, or what habitats are available in the depth, because if it's a bunch of snags stacked from the bottom up to the surface, that'll have more macroinvertebrates present than if it was deep and just a snag floating on top or something of that matter.
All right, great. Any other questions here? Give it a few more seconds. All right, well, don't see anybody else commenting. So I will just say thank you so much, Ashley, for the great presentation. And thanks to all of you for joining us this evening. Before you go, I wanted to mention that our next Winter Speaker Series event will be Tuesday, March 7th at 7 p.m. Scott Hayes from the Illinois Paddling Council will be presenting on paddling in Illinois. Also, we've opened the registration for our spring workshops. These workshops are designed to train new volunteers how to monitor stream quality in local streams by collecting macroinvertebrates, very similar to how Ashley and Josh collected and identified their invertebrates. You can register for these and other upcoming activities on our webpage or on our Facebook page. Thank you all again and have a wonderful evening.